The trade deadline is in the books. Who won, who lost, what were the big takeaways? We'll discuss that and much more. It's the Jake Asman Football Show. Cole Thompson joins us in his weekly spot, so let's get into it. It starts right now.
Oh, yeah. It's time for the Jake Asman Football Show. Brought to you by BetUS. Expert betting odds and fantasy stats. So let's get into some NFL football. Brought to you by our friends at BetUS. So get your questions ready. Here's your host, Jake Asman.
Yes, indeed. Hope everyone's having a great week so far. Yesterday, the biggest news in the country was obviously the NFL trade deadline at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Before we get into that, a reminder, we are indeed presented by BetUS. You could wager on any of the games we'll be discussing in this show, including Thursday Night Football tomorrow night, featuring the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens. We'll give our picks at the end a couple days early in advance, but of course, BetUS is the place to bet on any sport at any time. 150% sign-up bonus with your first deposit. Plus, take advantage. They're offering a 125% bonus with your second and third deposit. Shout out to the great BetUS Sportsbook for sponsoring our show. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us right now, a couple of days earlier than normal in his weekly spot on the program, is my good friend down in Houston, Texas, Cole Thompson. What's up, Cole?
How dare you? How dare you disrespect what actually was the biggest news yesterday? The voters, they stood tall. They let us know exactly what they thought, Jake. And they were wrong. Because if I don't know how we can look at a BYU team with 2 wins over ranked opponents and say that they are the number 9 seed in the initial college football playoff rankings, I'm sorry. I don't believe it. I think that it was rigged. It's absolutely egregious. That was the most important thing because now we know the pathway for 12 teams to make it to the college football playoff in 2024. Trade deadline, it was a big deal. We saw some marquee moves, but we got to realize that this is now a trajectory to deciding on who gets a shot at winning a national title.
Well said. Another big-time story yesterday in college football, no doubt. All right, as far as the trade deadline goes, Cole, I want to start with just some initial top takeaways. And I'm going to start with the Dallas Cowboys. Because after thinking about what they did yesterday, at 3-5 with Dak Prescott headed to the injured reserve, meaning he's out at least the next 4 games, the fact that the Dallas Cowboys traded a 4th-round pick for a wide receiver from the Carolina Panthers and Jonathan Mingo. I sit here a day later, still baffled by Jerry Jones and his decision-making there. What did you make of that trade, given some of the other receivers that have been dealt over the last couple of weeks? Like, for instance, Devontae, 3rd-round pick. Amari Cooper, 3rd-round pick. DeAndre Hopkins, who scored 2 touchdowns on Monday night, 5th-round pick. Mingo, going from a Panthers team that's not any good to a Cowboys team that's 3-5 without their quarterback for a 4th-round pick, I think is insane. What did you make of that deal?
Jonathan Mingo has 55 catches for 539 yards and no touchdowns in 2 years. And I believed in Jonathan Mingo coming out of Ole Miss. I thought he was one of the more polished overall receivers. I liked his catch radius. I thought he would be a good fit out in Carolina. But you have to realize something, Jake. Carolina kind of gave up on Jonathan Mingo in the offseason when they added in Deontay Johnson, who they flipped for draft picks earlier to the Baltimore Ravens that week. And they only get back in return a 4th-round pick. The exact same pick that you're getting back for a guy that has 2 more years of roster control, but hasn't shown you anything that he can be more than just a wide receiver number 4. How about Mike Williams, your team? This is an organization that is not complacently trying to move off of a wide receiver, but they realized if we can get some value back in return, maybe we'll go ahead and get a deal done. They did. They made a move with Pittsburgh, 5th-round pick coming back to Gang Green. And now he gets to be the wide receiver number 2 for Russell Wilson. Why didn't you offer a 5th-round pick if you were going to swing big for a wide receiver? And the big part is that once you get them in the building, you can start having negotiations behind closed doors saying, we know that you're probably not going to garner a lot of interest in the free agent market. So why don't you sign a 1-year extension while here for $9 million? You're locked in with a team that has a good shot of going to the playoff next season. Maybe can go on a deep postseason push. And you already have a contract that's guaranteed in your pocket before you have to worry about anything else. It just made no sense. Yes, the longevity part, I understand. But what has Jonathan Mingo shown you that he is worth a 4th-round pick when Amari Cooper is worth a 3rd-round pick, where DeAndre Hopkins probably is going to be worth a brand new contract of 3 years in the offseason, where Deontay Johnson stepped on up really big in his first game, where you watch as Devontae Adams has stepped up really big in his 3 games. it soured me when you knew that if you were going to make these type of moves, why not make a premier overall move? And then if even still go all in at that point, if you really don't feel like that you're going to have any regression, why not go ahead and add in a running back? Why not go ahead and add in another defensive back? Why not go ahead and add in a linebacker? Because if at least then you're showing, hey, we believe that our Super Bowl window is open now with or without Dak Prescott. We'll be able to capitalize. But to trade a 4th round pick that could end up being a very early 4th round pick for a guy that may or may not be on the roster next year, number one, and number two, with your quarterback going to the IR until the month of December, it's just malpractice. Congratulations to Jerry Jones on finding a way to be the most incompetent person in the NFL. And that's a tall task because of the guy who we make fun of on the regular as the worst owner in the sport fleeced you for a day 3 selection.
Well, if you think about it, right? So once upon a time, the Cowboys acquired Amari Cooper for a 2019 first-round pick. They then traded Cooper in March of 2022 for a 5th-round pick to the Browns. On October 15th, we watched the Browns trade Cooper and a 6th to Buffalo for a 3rd and a 7th. The Cowboys just traded a 4th-round pick for Jonathan Mingo. So to summarize, Cole, Cowboys gave up a 1st to get Cooper, then only received a 5th to get rid of him while he was still in the prime of his career. Then 2 years later, the Browns were able to get a 3rd-round pick for him after a bad start to the season. Then the Cowboys turn around and spent a 4th-round pick, more than they received for Cooper, to acquire the Panthers' 5th leading receiver. I mean,
Buddy,
just bad asset management by Jerry Jones.
Buddy, we're looking at potentially 7 out of the last 10 seasons. Amari Cooper has gone for over 1,000 yards. And you traded, at the end of the day, for less compensation for a dude who has 45 catches in 2 years. And this season, 121 yards as the wide receiver number 4. If you're going to swing, at least swing for the right receiver in Carolina. Adam Thielen was available. Deontay Johnson was available. Xavier Legette, if you really want to go ahead and give up, say, a 1st-round pick for next year, that way you have 4 years of roster control, do that. But instead, no. What you want to do is act like you're the smartest person in the room, that you know what's going on behind closed doors. You understand football better than people who have actually studied, played, and gone through the actual process of learning the sport. So the only person left to blame is you. Congratulations to Jerry Jones. You just showed your fan base. More importantly, you just showed you and Jake and I right here that your organization will not win a Super Bowl as long as you shall live. And the day that you die, I am flying out to Vegas. I am going into Circus Sport, and I am taking my entire life savings to bet on the Dallas Cowboys to win the Super Bowl that next coming season, because it's going to happen. This is your punishment, Jerry Jones, for making incompetent moves, for making dull malpractice decisions, for making egregious calls, because if you want to be the smartest person that has ever existed, you will never watch your team hoist up a Lombardi trophy, and the year that you die will be the year that they win it all.
Cole, some other thoughts on the deadline. I thought the move of the day was made by Washington going out there and getting Marshon Lattimore. It's amazing what hiring a competent coach and drafting the right quarterback can do. Commanders have been a joke for much of the last 25 years. Now they have new ownership. They hire the right coach in Dan Quinn. He hires the right coaching staff led by Cliff Kingsbury as the play caller. They draft Jaden Daniels, who's the front runner to win Rookie of the Year, and they're 7-2, and they're buyers at the NFL trade deadline. Trading away, they gave up, a nice amount to get Lattimore from the Saints, a 3rd and a 4th, but this guy's under contract for 2 more years beyond this year at a reasonable rate, and they're sending a message to their fans, hey, we're all in. And when you look at the NFC right now, why not? You can't tell me that other than maybe Detroit, there's a team better than what we've seen from Washington this season. So I love that move. I love what they did. They still have a ton of draft picks, by the way, in this upcoming draft, so they still have plenty of assets. Great move, I thought. What did you make of that one?
I think the fact that they had that extra 3rd-round pick from the Jahan Dotson deal was one that allowed them to make this type of decision, because they were willing to give up a 3rd-round selection for, on most days, an all-pro cornerback that will easily be the number one reason that your secondary has seen a lot of progress. This was one of the worst secondaries in the NFL, Jake. They may be sitting at 7-2, but several games they had to go down to the wire because of wide receivers were finding ways to get open against their cornerback play, against their safety play. That was an area to where you realize going into the offseason, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters were going to have to address, whether it be in free agency, whether it be in the draft long term. Well, now they can go ahead and get themselves a young cornerback maybe in the second round next year because of what they get with Marshon Lattimore. He's a physical press man coverage corner that does a great job in fluidity, winning against number one wide receivers. For years in New Orleans, he shut down stars, whether it be Tampa Bay with Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, whether it be out in Carolina at times, whether it be with the Atlanta Falcons. He always was able to be that blanket of concern and easily a reason why New Orleans was one of the better teams underneath Sean Payton because of that defensive front. And they still have a lot of draft capital. The other team that I was really impressed with, I got two quickly. Number one is Arizona. They're sitting at 5-4. They feel like that even though they're probably not a contender this year for the NFC, never say never. They have the quarterback. They feel really good about the direction of their offense. And I think also when you get a good, competent coach like Jonathan Gannon, who might be weird, but he knows how to get the team rallied up, you go ahead and you build and show that there's at least promise. That's what you did by bringing in Barry and Browning, a guy who was not going to be a long-term answer out in Denver. Maybe he'll revitalize his career and only want to be here for the foreseeable future. And I thought Pittsburgh as well. Pittsburgh is, again, this team that refuses to ever finish below 500. They're a team that always is going to be in the race for the AFC playoffs. They currently sit at 6-2. They need to get a competent number 2 wide receiver opposite of George Pickens. And they finally found out that answer with a 6'4" red zone target in Mike Williams, who was wide receiver number 4 for the New York Jets. And they only gave up a 5th-round pick for him. And they're going to take on most of his contract to where they feel really good about whoever is quarterback. They got 2 weapons that can win inside the red zone. They got 2 weapons that can move the sticks. They have a good ground game. I also like the addition of Preston Smith, because of at least now you're bringing in yet another defensive lineman, another edge rusher that can be a situational guy that wins in the backfield, puts quarterbacks in a pressure concern, and more importantly, allows this Pittsburgh team to still have the lead. They're about to enter their rockiest month of the NFL season so far, and they're about to go through what I would consider to be one of the more challenging schedules because they have yet to play a division game. Now that you're adding in a complementary piece at wide receiver, now that you're adding in more depth for your defense, they may end up finding a way to once again get into the playoffs and maybe even win the AFC North altogether.
He's Cole Thompson. My name is Jake Asman. You're watching the Jake Asman Football Show, coming at you multiple times a week, talking all things NFL. We are indeed presented by BetUS. Start betting with them today. Take advantage of that 150% sign-up bonus. All right, Cole. Let's talk about Thursday Night Football, and then you and I will make some picks, as we always do typically on Friday, but we're doing it a couple of days early because we wanted to come on and talk about the trade deadline yesterday. Fascinating game tomorrow night. Bengals at Ravens. Cincinnati, after a brutal start to the year, has played a lot better. Seemingly they do this every year, trying to get back in the mix in a wide-open AFC. Ravens at times, I felt like have looked like the best team in the conference. But you never know which Ravens team you're seemingly going to get. They've lost to the Browns. They've lost to the Raiders. They've also blown out the Bills. So it's been up and down for Baltimore. How do you view this matchup? Your thoughts on how it could play out?
Is it weird to say that right now whoever wins this game might be the front runner for MVP? Because the way that Joe Burrow has looked so far, when he is on point, feels like the favorite to win the award. I mean, look at last week's performance against the Las Vegas Raiders. Completion percentage, roughly around 70%. 5 touchdowns, sacked only 1 time, pass rating of 115. And he truly was the difference for this roster in games that they have won, in games where they have played close. Same thing for Lamar Jackson. Jackson right now is probably your favorite to take home the award for a second consecutive year. But I feel like that this is going to be a game that is won through the air. Who is going to have more plays made by their wide receiver core? You know, now now you bring in Deontay Johnson. Last week he was on a snap count because if he was learning the ins and outs of the offense, he's not going to be on a snap count this week. How does he open up the rest of the passing attack for guys like Rashad Bateman, for guys like Zay Flowers, for guys like Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely? How do you feel about the run game now having to be able to get stopped if you're Lou or Morrow because you didn't go out and you didn't bring in a defensive tackle? So this is now a game that maybe leans really much in favor of Derrick Henry to start finalizing a pathway to winning Offensive Player of the Year. But if Joe Burrow can deliver the way that he did against Las Vegas, I think this is going to be a shootout. Both these teams have question marks overall. What I wonder is there enough for the defense on Cincinnati's side to get a critical stop, whether it be on 3rd and long, whether it be on 2nd and short, to put them in an uncomfortable situation to where you get the ball back in Joe Burrow's hands and they can drive down the football field. Another team that also added in a player was Cincinnati. Khalil Herbert leaves Chicago. He goes on over to the Bengals. Can he be effective in his first game? Because it does feel like Zach Moss is going to be out and they're going to rely heavily on Chase Brown.
Cole, when it comes to the Baltimore Ravens, how do we know which version of them is going to show up?
If we get the right version, though, this is the best team in the AFC, right?
I think so. When they play,
Yeah.
I think if the Ravens play their A game, they're the best team because even though Kansas City's undefeated, it's a testament to them. I don't know if they've been as dominant as other Chiefs teams. They're great. I still would make them the favorites until someone knocks off the two-time defending champs. But I do agree with you. It feels like if the Ravens play at their best, you could argue they are the best team, but they just seemingly sometimes play down to the level of their competition.
Well, the good news is they've only lost one game at home, and it was to the Las Vegas Raiders back in week 2. Besides that, they have dominated at M&T Bank Stadium, 35-10 win against Buffalo, 30-23 win against Washington. So, when they're playing in front of the home crowd, I think that does a lot of benefactor for them. They also kind of did a good job of adding in some smaller names that will benefit for depth purposes. I already mentioned Deontay Johnson, but they went out and they brought in Tre'Davious White, the cornerback from the Los Angeles Rams. This was at one point a former all-pro defensive back that was a nightmare for AFC East opponents because of his physicality and his smooth footwork. He hasn't been able to get back to that same level, but you would gladly take him as a depth piece for this team, especially when you have questions opposite the young guy in Nate Wiggins and Marlon Humphrey now moving permanently inside to the nickel position. So I feel like that once again, this has been the MO for Baltimore for years. And the problem is until we see them get past a Kansas City, get past a Buffalo consistently, they're going to be the underdog in the AFC because they always have been. But they feel like the most complete team. The offensive line is doing a great job keeping Lamar Jackson upright. Derrick Henry has just shown everybody that there still is a new version of life to his game. The wide receivers aren't dropping passes. Lamar's improved as a passer every single year in the NFL, but his accuracy, his delivery, I think his consistency has been through the roof this season. He has not been the problem. And defensively, they always have one of the best units in the NFL. So their stretch of games moving forward are going to really decide what we think of them. Games against the Bengals, the Chargers, the Eagles, and the Steelers, all 4 of those teams feel like playoff rosters right now. If they can go 4-0 in that stretch, Jake, they may end up being close calls, but when you can play on the road and at home and have a very dominant or even consistent performance, that to me is enough to put you in the number 1 spot. I have not been impressed with Kansas City. I have not been impressed at times with Buffalo. I certainly have not been impressed with the Houston Texans. When I look at the pure overall upside and potential of what Baltimore is, they feel like the most complete team in the NFL. Or the most complete team in the AFC, not NFL.
I'm right there with you. All right, let's make some picks, Cole. As always, we do these typically on Friday on the show. We make 3 picks a week. Cole and I have been duking it out all season long. Whoever wins gets the benefit of enjoying a nice steak dinner paid for by the person who loses. Just to recap a little bit, Cole, how did you do with your Week 9 selections, bud?
You want to tell them? You want, it was fantastic. I'm sitting and watching my television screen saying to myself, this is the year, Cole. This is the year of the underdog. This is where you trust former quarterbacks, has-beens that were dropped off by their other teams. A quarterback that was the very last one selected of the top 6 in the 2024 NFL draft. How you think I did, Jake? How you think I did?
Well, according to my records here, Cole, you had the Browns, and that was a loser against the Chargers.
Thank you.
Had the Broncos, and that was a loser against the Ravens.
I had hope for a minute.
And you had the Colts against the Vikings.
Now hold up. Now that one, they had to get Sam Darnold back for missing that face mask call in the back at the end. So that's the only reason I lost that game. It had nothing to do with the on-field execution of Joe Flacco. It has everything to do with that.
Yeah, by my counts, Cole, that is an 0-3 week. Your thoughts?
Don't worry. Every blind squirrel finds a nut. I can't wait for you to go ahead and get your time to shine in the sun of being the Golden Sombrero loser.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I did go, in fact, 2-1 last week, winning head-to-head against Cole with the Ravens. I won with the Lions. I did lose with the Bills, not being able to cover the 6. But Cole, because of your week and my week, for the first time all season, I now am in first place in front of you. I'm 14-10 overall with your 0-3. You're 500. You're 12-12. So
you started off so hot too.
You were red hot.
I was so hot.
Jake Asman is here, baby. And since I won the week, I will start us off with my first pick for our weekly picks of the NFL. And once again, all these lines we use courtesy of BetUS. So if you want to wager on any of these games, certainly check it out. All right, here we go. Game number 1 for me, Cole. I'm going overseas. We're going to Germany, where this game might be so god-awful, I have to put something on it to make it watchable. Ladies and gentlemen, Panthers, Giants. Giants are a 6-point favorite. The Giants have not been a favorite in a game in over 2 years. And guess what? I'm picking against the Giants. I'm not betting the Giants laying 6. They've shown me nothing. Panthers actually coming off a win. I don't think they're any good, but I just think this is going to be an ugly, typical European slot fest that oftentimes we see, whether the game's played in London or now Germany. So I like the Panthers. I don't know why, other than I just think it's going to be a gross game, and give me the team that has 6 points coming its way. So I'll take the Panthers getting 6 for my first game.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It makes a lot of sense. You want to know what also makes a lot of sense? Picking against a team that has just fired their head coach in incompetent fashion. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. Sorry, New Orleans, you're going down this weekend. Give me the Falcons at -3.5. Here's the deal. Atlanta not only was able to knock out Dak Prescott, you're finally seeing that Kirk Cousins has never been the problem. Kirk Cousins certainly has limitations. Kirk Cousins certainly is not the most overall upside quarterback. But when you put him in an offense that caters towards his strengths, when you put him in an offense that allows him to be able to thrive under pressure and give him a consistent run game, which Atlanta has with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, I know that they don't have Drake London, but let's just be real for a second. Darnell Mooney is going off right now, and you can appreciate that if you were a Chicago Bears fan. My bad. You actually hate that if you're a Chicago Bears fan because you never could get this potential for him. But Dennis Allen fired. I have no idea what they're going to do at quarterback at this point. Do they just tank and try to get the number 1 overall pick in 2024? You know, this is also a game to where they're probably going to be without Chris Olave. They also going to be without Marshon Lattimore because they hightailed it on out of there over to Washington for the first time in almost a decade. Jake Asman, the rebuild is on in the Bayou, and it starts this weekend. So give me the Falcons -3.5 over the Saints.
Ladies and gentlemen, game number 2 for me. I am going to a game that Cole Thompson, I believe, will be in the building for. Texans hosting the Detroit Lions. Cole, I like the Lions here. It's 3.5, so the hook does scare me. I'd love it at 3. But you know what? After watching this Texans team in person, I just have major questions about the state of their offensive line. Detroit adding Zadarius Smith is a nice pickup for them at the deadline. He's not Aiden Hutchinson, of course, but he should help. I have faith in this Lions team. I think they're the best team in the NFL. Forget just the NFC. I really believe in what we saw from the Lions last week, going on the road in ugly conditions and proving they're not just a dome team in Green Bay. I thought was big for them. And look, I mean, you know the Texans. I know the record's still good, but point differential tells you they're not as good as their record. We saw how ugly it was against the Jets last Thursday, a Jet team that couldn't get out of its own way for 5 weeks. So maybe it's a bounce back spot for the Texans, and this is a sucker bet. But at only 3.5, I trust the Lions to go into Houston and get a win here. So I'm taking the Lions and laying the 3.5.
You know, Jake, I do miss you out here in Houston. And you usually come over for Thanksgiving, and we're usually together around the holidays. You can call it kind of like that. We're in cuffing season, and I'm going to cuff myself to this pick as well. And I'm taking the Lions. We're doing a family play this week. We're doing a family play this week. Listen, here's the deal. The Houston Texans have no idea if they're going to get Nico Collins back in this game. If they do get back Will Anderson, who left last week during the second half against the New York Jets with an ankle injury, he's going to be extremely limited. They didn't go out and they added anybody in the in the trade deadline. So their offensive line that has been hindered by injuries and inconsistent play and pass protection, last week allowing 8 sacks to the New York Jets. I get it. Hassan Reddick came back in. First big-time performance, but still 8 sacks is inexcusable. And you brought this up. Zadarius Smith is not the number 1 pass rusher in Detroit, unlike Aiden Hutchinson, but he has 5 sacks, and the one area of weakness for Detroit on the defensive side the last few weeks has been their ability to pressure a quarterback. They're going to be able to pressure C.J. Stroud. The part that you also left out that's really important here, bearing a move last second from the NFL, Jameson Williams is going to be back after his 2-game suspension, and he's going to be able to now take pressure in the passing attack off of Amon-Ra St. Brown, off of Sam Laporta, Jahmyr Gibbs out of the backfield, David Montgomery, and whoever your third number 3 receiver is. Ben Johnson is in a prime location to take whatever job he wants this offseason. Aaron Glenn, the defense coordinator that continues to be disrespected, is in a prime spot to take whatever job he wants this offseason. And Jake, I have been screaming since week 1. I get it. The loss to Tampa Bay is souring, but the most overall complete roster in the NFL are the Detroit Lions. They're going to show you once again on Saturday why they are. 3 feels like way, way, way too low. They win by at least a touchdown in NRG Stadium.
Ladies and gentlemen, Cole Thompson and I on the same page with that one. So bet accordingly. All right, final game for me, Cole. I got to fade my team. Now, I'm hoping I get this one wrong. I would love for you to pick up a game if it means I'm losing this one. But I'm taking the Cardinals. I've seen this script too many times when it comes to the New York Jets. They have this big win when a lot of people weren't expecting it. Then it's like, oh, this is a turning point. Then they come out as flat as a pancake the following week. The last time the Jets won a big game on Thursday Night Football was week 3, beat New England. They're 2-1. Then they lose 10-9 at home and came out as flat as you could possibly come out against the Denver Broncos. Now, there's a different coach for the Jets now. It's Jeff Ulbrich, not Robert Saleh. But I got to see it to believe it. Arizona runs the ball well. Kyler Murray is a freak athlete. They're playing good football right now. They're at home. I feel like the Jets never win a game when they go on the West Coast. So I am fading my own team. I'm taking the Cardinals here, laying the 1.5 against my New York Jets.
You know, there's 2 games I'm really trying to decide between. I don't feel good about either, but there is one thing that does stand out, and it is the fact that right now, after the performance we saw on Sunday Night Football, Joe Flacco is not Mr. Elite anymore. Joe Flacco is still a good quarterback, but he no longer belongs in that category of Mr. Unlimited. And while I can't pick Russell Wilson, I can't pick against Joe Flacco, which is why I'm taking the Bills at -4. Listen, Buffalo had that strange performance last week against the Miami Dolphins. It went down to the wire, but Jake Bass also made a career-long field goal to be able to send his team to victory, and they still have the offensive pieces. They're expected to hopefully get back Amari Cooper. You bring him in with Khalil Shakir. The run game is starting to get a little bit more potent. I know the defense is very hit and miss, but if you're able to slow down Jonathan Taylor, I just don't feel like that you're going to have any promise with the passing attack right now for Indianapolis. They have question marks on the defensive line. They have question marks when it comes to the secondary. I feel like this is a game where Josh Allen can utilize his legs, win in the open field, slide for first downs, win the time of possession, win on third down, and basically force an Indianapolis squad that is now fighting for their life to have to play perfect football in the second half. That's impossible to do. I think that you're going to watch as Buffalo secures another win on the season. They continue to build their lead in the AFC East. Give me them at -4.
Ladies and gentlemen, he is Cole Thompson. My name is Jake Asman. It has been the Jake Asman Football Show. Cole, did it feel different doing this on a Wednesday as opposed to a Friday?
No, it felt different doing that at 8 a.m. versus 1 p.m. That's what it felt.
Thanks for getting up early for me, man.
Oh, I was already at the gym, so it's all good. You know, I just had to freaking run home from the gym and sit in traffic to try to get here. But I do the things I do for the Asmaniacs, and more importantly, the things I do for the Jake Asman Football Show. So
that's right.
Whatever you need.
That's right, baby. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to wager on any of the games we discussed, you've heard us say it. BetUS, that's the place to do it. Shout out to BetUS Sportsbook for sponsoring today's show. He's Cole Thompson. Follow him on Twitter at Mr. Cole Thompson. Check out his YouTube channel as well. Cole Thompson on YouTube. It comes right up, and you can subscribe there. Everyone enjoy the games this week. It's been a wild week in our country, but don't worry. There's always football. We got football on tomorrow featuring a Thursday night game we previewed earlier in the show, the Bengals and the Ravens. For Cole Thompson, my name is Jake Asman. Have a good one, everybody. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video if you haven't done so already, and we will talk to you next time.